Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, in Georgia, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is still the 12 figurative months, and we are now in our episode number 30. And we will focus our attention to the last three trumpets, being Wu trumpets. I would like to read 12 symbolic code number 2, page 4. It says, "Now we wish to ascertain what period we are living in. At the sounding of the sixth trumpet, the four angels are to be let loose, and they are then to kill a third part of men, and their army, moreover, is to number 200 million horsemen, and that many horses. Since no such thing as this has ever happened, it therefore speaks for itself that the sixth trumpet is yet in the future. It has not yet commenced to sound." Then it says, "In view of the fact that we are not living in the sixth trumpet, let us ascertain whether we may be in the sounding of the fifth trumpet, or whether it is yet future." 12 symbolic code number 2, page 4. And I think it is one of the portion by which some Davidian brethren rejected the so-called new codes, for according to their understanding, it contradicted with the rest of the Shepherd's Rod publications. And because of that conclusion, they gathered, I would like to say, hearsay as evidences to prove that the new codes are not a part of the Shepherd's Rod publications. It's only because they cannot harmonize some of the statements recorded in the new codes. Now, we, the full-fledged believer of the new codes, it is our burden to prove that the new codes is in perfect harmony with all the rest of the Shepherd's Rod publications. And not only in harmony, but it reveals great truth. So, the statement on one symbolic code number 4, page 5, is applied here, saying, "The trouble does not lie in the statements themselves, but rather in man's limited knowledge of the truth therein." So, that where the trouble lies. Because of their limited knowledge and understanding, they cannot be able to comprehend those messages recorded in the new codes. And the same with the statement in 3 symbolic code 8 to 10, page 10. It says, "The trouble does not lie in the aforenamed publications, but rather in the minds of those who read them." Now, let us read tract number 5. Tract number 5 on page 34. And we know tract number 5 is dealing specifically the subject of the 7 trumpets. Now let us read tract number 5, page 34. "In the main, however, the trumpets and the seals portray an event which is future from John's time, and which takes place in heaven, although they also portray kindred events. Of these related events, some are contributory, and some are consequent to the main prophetic event. The former naturally precede, and the latter naturally follow it, historically. So the Shepherd's Rod is very plain that both the seven seals and the seven trumpets, the main prophetic event takes place in heaven. And we call it the spiritual side. But the kindred events, by which some are related events, contributory, and some are consequent to the main prophetic event, takes place on the earth. So let us distinctly separate the occurrence that takes place in heaven and the occurrence that takes place on earth. And that is the reason why, brothers and sisters, the shepherd's rod admonishes us in tract number 8, page 5. So, correctly to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. The shepherd's rod made it so plain that it offers the impossibility that you could be able to make a proper application of the subject, the seven seals, unless we could have better understanding of the heavenly sanctuary service. It says here in 2SR 187, the seven seals and the sanctuary. In order to make a proper application of the seven seals, we must have a better understanding of the heavenly sanctuary service, its origin, and the object of its existence as taught by the earthly sanctuary built by Moses. Hebrews 8 verse 5. In the sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. Now, since the seven seals and the seven trumpets are coupled together, that each respective seal, there must be respective trumpet. So the first seal, the respective trumpet must be the first trumpet. Now let us read first tract number 5, page 32. It says here, this basic truth that each period of destruction follows only after a corresponding period of sealing is corroborated by the fact that the symbolical locus which came up at the sounding of the fifth trumpet hurt only those men which had not the seal of God in their foreheads. All this shows not only that each trumpet follows its sealing period, but also that the nature of the trumpets reveals the punishment of those who failed to receive the seal in their particular periods. And then in page 35 it says, naturally then, the first seal must precede the first trumpet, the second seal, the second trumpet, and so on, like the needle and the shuttle, rather than that all seven seals must precede all seven trumpets. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. So let us distinctly separate the occurrences that takes place on earth and the occurrences that takes place in heaven. And since, brothers and sisters, the divine principle given by the Word of God, that the seal must precede its respective trumpet. Now let us focus immediately to our subject, the last three trumpets. When does the fifth trumpet commence? Now let us read tract number 5. It says here, tract number 5, page 79. Let us read the statement. The flood, first trumpet. The Exodus movement, second trumpet. The giving of the Old Testament scriptures, third trumpet. The church going into captivity, fourth trumpet. Christ's first advent and subsequent events, fifth trumpet. Now, the fifth trumpet began with the birth of Jesus Christ on 4 BC. Now, how about the fifth seal? 2SR page 221. Let us read 2SR page 221. Summary of commencement and termination of seals. The first seal covers the entire period from Adam to the flood. The second seal from the flood to Abraham. The third seal from Abraham to Christ. The fourth seal from Christ to 1500 AD. The fifth seal from 1500 AD to 1755. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. The fifth seal commences from 1500 AD to 1755 AD. So it is contrary to the proper application of the prophetic event that the fifth seal must precede the fifth trumpet. But in this occurrence, the fifth trumpet precedes the fifth seal. Therefore, the only admissible conclusion is that it is only the groundwork. It is not the particular object in view. Now let us read tract number 5 on page 32. It says, the statements which must shortly come to pass, Revelation 1 verse 1, and I will show these things which must be hereafter, Revelation 4 verse 1, go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view of showing the things lying not behind, but ahead of John's time, with reference being made only incidentally to the past, in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. Now the statement is very plain that the particular object in view of the entire book of Revelation from chapter 1 to chapter 22, lying not behind, but rather ahead of John's time. And it says that whatever application applied in the past, that is only the groundwork. That is not the particular object in view, because the particular object in view must be fulfilled in the future, ahead of John's time. Must be from 100 AD onwards, according to the voice of inspiration. Now, here in page 33 and page 34, it says, so though all such prophecies necessarily bring to our attention things which took place centuries ago, yet they are designed, like the revelation, to show to God's people things which must shortly come to pass. Now, the question is that, who are they, the people of God mentioned here? That the particular object in view of the book of Revelation is to show to God's people things which must shortly come to pass. Without any doubts, it cannot be applied in the time when the book of Revelation were not yet written. The book of Revelation was written 96 AD, ended on 98 AD. So the book of Revelation, the statement, the book of Revelation must be applied to the time when that book were already in existence. And it did not exist prior to 98 AD. And the Shepherd's Rod, it says in 2SR page 111. Let me read to you. 2SR page 111. The book of Daniel and the book of Revelation were written especially for the generation living at the time of the end, and not so much for the Roman world. See Daniel 12 verse 4. They had no understanding of the writings, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, that pertain to the last days, and thus could not have profited by them. And in 2TG number 7, it says, let's read 2TG number 7 on page 3. Daniel was told to shut and seal the book, even to the time of the end. The book, therefore, was not for the understanding of the people before the time of the end. And we read several times that the Shepherd's Rod is very plain, saying in 3 Symbolic Code number 8 to 10, page 8, it says, this time must have begun when the book began to be opened. But if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it, in a spatial sense, began in the year 1844. The same with the statement in 2SR page 191, saying, "The door he saw opened is the veil between the holy and the most holy, for there is no other that had been kept close." Therefore, the word hereafter in chapter 4, verse 1, means from the time of the vision, pointing forward to 1844. So it points out in October 22, 1844, the commencement of the breaking of the seven seals, beginning from the first seal. Therefore, we can easily understand that the divine principle by which, as stated by the Word of God, that the seal must precede the trumpets, must be applied to the particular object in view in the breaking of the seven seals in the heavenly sanctuary, which commenced in October 22, 1844. That its respective seal, there must be respective trumpet. That the fifth trumpet cannot begin to sound in its perfect fulfillment, the main prophetic event, not until the fifth seal is finished, because the trumpet follow its respective seal. So that is the only reason why the Bedean are confused with the subject of the seven trumpets, because they mix up the groundwork and the particular object in view. Now I'd like to read tract number 5, page 34. It says, tract number 5, page 34. So let us go back again, the statement from page 33 and page 34. So though all such prophecies necessarily bring to our attention things which took place centuries ago, yet they are designed, like the revelation, to show to God's people things which must shortly come to pass. Who are they, the people of God mentioned here? Without any doubt, they are the people by which they will no longer to taste death. Now, for example, I would like to connect to you the divine command given by God to prophet Ezekiel. So let's go to tract number 1, pages 29, page 30. The reader will know that though the prophet was bidden to go speak to his people, yet instead of being told what to say, he was commanded, "Open thy mouth and eat that I gave thee." And when I looked, says Ezekiel, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a rule of a book was therein. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest, eat this rule, and go speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that rule. Ezekiel 2, verse 8, verse 9. Ezekiel 3, verses 1 and 2. As the words which Ezekiel was to speak to his people were found in the book which he ate, the book can be none other than the Bible, from which comes the message culminating in joy, mourning, and woe. And then it says, and lo, a roll of a book was therein, and he spread it before me. And it was written within and without. And there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9 and verse 10. Thy right in besieging the slaughter in Ezekiel chapter 9. And the words pronounced in the master's parables, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of. And shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion. With the hypocrites there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 24, verse 50, 51. Matthew 22, verse 13. Now, our reading plainly declared that the prophet was commanded to go to speak to God's people. And who are they, the people of God, by which the prophet had been commanded to speak to them? The 12 tribes, according to our reading. But the voice of inspiration definitely declared here in 1SR Pocket Edition on page 74, Ezekiel was commanded to engrave a city upon a tile and to name it Jerusalem. The material on which the city was to be engraved, being everlasting, not subject to decay, it denotes that the city envisioned is one that will stand eternally, a people that shall never die. 1 SR Packet Edition, page 74. And of course, the 12 tribes of Israel that will no longer to taste death. They are 144,000 living saints. And the prophet was commanded to go to speak to the 144,000 living saints. And the message must be taken from the book that he ate. And according to that reading in tract number 1, page 29 and page 30, that is the Bible. Now, in 2SR, let's read 2SR page 9, it says, I would like to read the statement. The book of Revelation is said to be a closed book full of symbolical mysteries incomprehensible to human beings. This is true of all prophetic truths. The one who admits this fact of the book of Revelation automatically confesses that he does not understand the Bible, for all the books of Holy Writ meet and end in the Revelation. Therefore, to understand that book is to understand the Bible. 2SR page 9. So to understand that book, what book? The book of Revelation, is to understand the Bible. Because the Bible is fully revealed in the book of Revelation. The shepherds had made it so plain that the Bible contained the complete formula of the plan of redemption. Here in 1 TG number 10, page 18, the Bible contains the complete plan of salvation for all humanity. How do I know this? I know it because its story begins with creation and ends with the earth made new. Between the first and the last pages of the Bible, then lies the complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. The complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. But the Bible cannot be understood without the book of Revelation. Because to understand the Bible is to understand the book of Revelation. Now let us read 2TG number 12. It says here on 2TG number 12, the statement, page 24 and 25. I would like to read first page 25 in 2TG number 12. The revelation then is thus divided into 7 parts. The revelation then is thus divided into 7 parts. And so, when we speak of the 7 seals, we are in reality speaking of the revelation. You see, the shepherd's rod made it so plain that when we speak of the 7 seals, then in reality, we are speaking the entire book of Revelation. Now, in page 24, it says, page 24, chapters 4 and 5, we see contain a scene of a special event which caused the book to be unsealed. That which came out of the book is, in the fullest sense, the revelation of Jesus Christ, of the one who only was worthy to open the book. Thus it is that the revelation of Jesus Christ begins with the 6th chapter and ends with the last chapter of the book. The chapters in which are recorded the things which the breaking of the 7 seals disclose. Yes, the revelation consists of the things which were sealed with 7 seals. So the voice of inspiration says that the thing which came out of that book in the right hand of God the Father, in the fullest sense, is the revelation of Jesus Christ. The revelation of Jesus Christ. Or in other words, the revelation of Jesus Christ is found in that book, which is the plan of redemption. By which that book, it did exist even before there was a created being. Because the plan of redemption is not an afterthought, according to Desire of Ages. It was already existed even before there was a created being. Here in Desire of Ages, page 22, the plan for our redemption was not an afterthought. A plan formulated after the fall of Adam. It was a revelation of the mystery which had been kept in silence through times eternal. Romans 16 verse 25. It was an unfolding of the principles that from eternal ages had been the foundation of God's throne. From the beginning, God and Christ knew of the apostasy of Satan and of the fall of men through the deceptive power of the apostate. God did not ordain that sin should exist, but He foresaw its existence and made provision to meet the terrible emergency. So great was His love for the world that He covenanted to give His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3, verse 16. And that is the mystery of God, brothers and sisters, according to Desire of Ages, page 22, in Romans 16, verse 25. Now let's go back to our main subject, because we have a different subject concerning the mystery of God. Now, according to the Shepherd's Rod, brothers and sisters, the particular object in view are the saints that shall never die. The 12 tribes of spiritual Israel that will no longer to taste death. And that is the reason why the promise was in 2TG number 12 on page 30, saying, 2TG number 12 on page 30, the revelation, therefore, is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living. 2TG number 12, page 30. So, the revelation is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living. Ptahotep died in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead. Therefore, whatever understanding that God bestowed to Ptahotep, it is not the full understanding of the plan of redemption as revealed in the book of Revelation. Even though that such understanding was not given by God to Ptahotep, completely the entire plan of redemption, but we fully believe that all the necessary material to explain the plan of redemption was already recorded in the Shepherd's Rod publications. But the divine principle is designed with Daniel and John. That although Daniel, he is the one who wrote that book, John the Beloved, he is the one who wrote the book of Revelation, but they themselves could not be able to comprehend those messages that they had written, not until the divinely appointed time is come. As stated in the Great Controversy 344, even the prophets that had been favored by God with a special illumination of the Spirit did not fully comprehend the true import of the meaning of the messages that they had written. The message must be unfolded from time to time. And the same with the statement in 2TG 44, page 31, it says that although John wrote them, he himself could not explain it before time. 2TG 44, page 31. And though John wrote them, John the Beloved, he is the one who wrote the book of Revelation. He himself could not before time explain them. Then how can we do such before time and without the inspiration of the same Spirit who indicted them or who dictated them? And the divinely appointed time is in the period of the judgment that pertains to the living, as stated in 2TG number 12, page 30. Then if we could be able to explain the entire book of Revelation, the only admissible conclusion is that God Himself is at work. Because according to 2TG 24, on page 16, it says that even the devil eater cannot do such thing. It says here in 2TG 24:16, are not these tests strong enough to convince any of you that the secret things of God, such as the canceled prophecies, are not disclosed by finite men, no, not by the devil either, that when God wants a thing to be a secret, it remains canceled until He Himself reveals it. Then, when it is revealed, all are to know that God Himself is at work. Of all the messages ever recorded in the Bible, it is concerning the mediatorial work of Jesus Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, that it is absolutely decreed by God that no man in heaven, no man on earth, neither under the earth, pointing to the devil and all the fallen angels, could be able to explain anything concerning Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. Only Michael, the lion in the tribe of Judah, could be able to open it. Meaning, only Jesus Christ, through His Spirit, that such proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary can be understood. That without the Spirit of Christ in the man, it utters the impossibility to explain the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And since the voice of inspiration made it so plain in tract number 15, on page 13, it says, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while the preparations were being made for the judgment to convene. Whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. Therefore, the book of Revelation, brothers and sisters, explain the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary from start to finish. To understand that book, brothers and sisters, is to understand the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary from start to finish. Remember, in White House Recruiter, page 39, I would like to read White House Recruiter, page 39. It says here, all who have perused these pages to this point have surely become aware of the fact that even this very restricted representation of the additional message, that of the judgment of the living, gives in itself tremendous power and force to the three angels' messages. Early Writings, page 277. But in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? First, by bringing to light the heretofore unrevealed aspects of the judgment, and then subsequently by freeing God's people from both sin and sinners, thereby bringing into existence the long-looked-for purified church that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners. Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 10, Prophets and Kings, page 725. A veritable powerhouse indeed. Now, I would like to focus to that statement that the third angel's message will never swell into a loud cry, not until all the unrevealed aspects that pertains to the judgment must be completely revealed. The judgment is divided only into two phases. The judgment that pertains to the dead and the judgment that pertains to the living. Therefore, the statement, all unrevealed aspects must be pertaining to the aspects which was not revealed by God to Sister White and the aspects which was not revealed by God to Betty Hotep. According to Journal Conference Special, page 39, the only message that was given by God to Sister White is the judgment that pertains to the dead. But she has no knowledge concerning the judgment that pertains to the living, by which the message that was given by God to Sister White do not even touch that message, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Now, brothers and sisters, concerning Betty Hotep, not all that pertains to the judgment that pertains to the living had been revealed by God to Betty Hotep. Although, to repeat again, all the necessary information, all the material to explain the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary was already written in the Shepherd's Rod publications, together with the writings of Sister White, by which we commonly call as the Golden Bowl. Now, since the promise given in White House Recruiter, page 34, it says, with the completed message, with the completed judgment message during the 11th hour, So the statement, completed judgment message, can be easily understood that all aspects been completely revealed because the entire message had been completed, and that is called the mystery of God is finished. Now, I would like to read tract number 1 on page 20. Tract number 1, page 20, it says, since the purification or the sealing came at the commencement of the loud cry, as we have already seen, the 144,000 are therefore the first fruits, the first to be sealed. Tract number 1, page 20. When does the sealing of the 144,000 begins? At the commencement of the loud cry. Now, the Voice of Inspiration says in White House Recruiter, page 39, the loud cry can never begin, not until all the aspects that pertains to the judgment is completely revealed. Can be easily understood, brothers and sisters, that when the sealing of the 144,000 begins, indicates that at that time, which is the commencement of the loud cry, at that time, all the aspects that pertains to the judgment is completely revealed. The entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. This statement in 1 TG number 14 on page 21 saying, what a momentous day! What a great people! Evidently, they constitute the stone of Zechariah chapter 3, which we studied several weeks ago and learned that it has 7 eyes, complete spiritual vision. Obviously, this is the stone that smites the great image of Daniel 2, verse 45. Now, all of us, I think, agree that the stone pointing to the 144,000 living saints. But before the entire constituent of the 144,000 living saints will completely sealed, there must be first the ministry, the first of the first fruits, the vanguard, according to Leviticus of the Gideon on page 3. Now, in answerer number 5, I would like to read this reading. In answerer number 5 on page 55, it says here, the Bible and the books of the spirit of prophecy being the sole source of the shepherd's rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the spirit of prophecy are taught. Answerer number 5, page 55. When the rod is taught, then the Bible and the spirit of prophecy are taught. And of course, you cannot teach something by which you do not understand. And there are many messages recorded in the shepherd's rod by which many Davidian do not even touch. For example, tract number 3, page 86, the 40 typical days. I never heard any Davidian explaining, brothers and sisters, the 40 typical days. How about the 30 typical days in 2SR 256? I never heard, but it was there already in the shepherd's rod publications. How about, brothers and sisters, the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary? To repeat again, brothers and sisters, the shepherd's rod greatly emphasizes here in 1 TG number 51, pages 5 and page 6. So let's read here. Pages 5 and page 6. According to this reading, if the church is not commensurably growing and expanding, then how can she be a living church? And how can she keep up with the signs of the times and with the progress in the sanctuary above? And to repeat again, in tract number 15, on the very first page, on page 5, it says, the 7 seals, the signs of the times. That is why the shepherd's rod says that, no, it is impossible that you could be able to make a proper application of the subject, the 7 seals, and also attach the subject of the 7 trumpets, unless we have a better understanding concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. But the absolute fact is that no man in heaven, no man on earth, neither under the earth, that could be able to explain anything concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, except only through Michael, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus Christ, that without His Spirit, it utters the impossibility that you could explain anything concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. But the promise was, it will be more fully understood during the period of the judgment that pertains to the living. That is very plain, brothers and sisters. And since it is antitypical Ezekiel that had been commanded by God to go to speak to His people, the 144,000 living saints, undoubtedly it must be pointing to the last prophet. And it could not be British prophet. He died in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, in the time when the 144,000 or the constituent of that 144,000 candidates to be translated to heaven no longer to taste death, that in his lifetime, they do not even yet born, physically born. Now, brothers and sisters, let us go back again to our subject. And according to one Azar Packet edition on page 58, it says that, but now at the appointed time, He Himself reveals their significance to the very people for whom they were originally and especially designed. One Azar Packet edition, page 58, that when the appointed time came, Jesus Christ Himself, His Spirit, will reveal, brothers and sisters, all the significance in the plan of redemption recorded in the Bible, explained by the book of Revelation, interpreted by the shepherd's rod. It will be revealed to the very people by which they were originally and especially designed, and they are the people that destined for translation, no longer to taste death. And it is concerning the seven seals, because when we speak of the seven seals, we are speaking of the revelation. Now let's read 2TG number 12 again, page 25. And so, when we speak of the seven seals, we are in reality speaking of the revelation. 2TG 12:25. So when we study the subject of the seven seals, then we are in reality studying the book of Revelation. Or in other words, when the inter-subject of the seven seals will be completely understood, then the inter-book of Revelation is completely understood. That it utters the impossibility that you could be able to understand the subject of the seven trumpets unless you completely understand the seven seals, because the seals precede the trumpet. And since our subject is the last three seals, brothers and sisters, together with the last three trumpets, that the fifth trumpet in its perfect fulfillment, by which the occurrence takes place in heaven, must commence after the fifth seal is completely finished, until the proceedings of the first five seals were completely finished. That is the time that the fifth trumpet begins to sound. It was applied in the past, according to tract number 5, page 32, and page 33 and 34. But that is the kindred events. That is not the particular object in view. That was only the groundwork. So let us distinctly separate the particular object in view and the groundwork. Here in 2SR page 201, it says, this book, that is the book in the right hand of God the Father, it says, I would like to read in page 200, the opening of the book. This scripture reveals that there is not another in the vast universe of God that is worthy or that can open the book, for the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed. Christ acquired the above title by His birth and by His victory on the cross. For those who would believe in Him as the Savior of the world, He has prevailed by shedding His blood on Calvary. Thus none other can open the book, for He alone has died for the human race. This book contains the names of the saints And the seven seals comprise prophetically the world's history during which time the saints are sealed. These 7 periods of unfulfilled history sealed the book, and the only one that could open it, see into the future, was the Lamb. You see the statement? 7 periods of unfulfilled history. What is the unfulfilled history? The particular object in view. The fulfilled prophecy is called history. And that fulfilled prophecy are employed by the scriptures to serve only as groundwork. Tract number 5, page 34. Fulfilled prophecies are seen, therefore, to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. Tract number 5 on page 34. Now, to repeat again, let us now focus our whole attention to the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy. And let us distinctly separate the groundwork by which such groundwork, the particular object in view, is on the earth. But the main prophetic event, the particular object in view, are the occurrence in the heavenly sanctuary, by which it will be fulfilled in its perfect order that each seal precede its corresponding trumpet. The first seal precede the first trumpet. The second seal precede the second trumpet. The third seal precede the third trumpet. The fourth seal precede the fourth trumpet. The fifth seal precede the fifth trumpet. The sixth seal precede the sixth trumpet. The seventh seal precede the seventh trumpet. According to the Shepherd's Rod, tract number 5, 32 and 35. Now, let us read 2SR. Page 193. It says, some have applied the 7 seals of the 6th trumpet of the Revelation to the church in the New Testament time, but the symbols are contrary to the application. But the point that I would like to emphasize in this reading is the 7 seals of the 6th chapter. Therefore, there are 7 seals on chapter 6, by which the things that was not mentioned on the chapter 6 is the 7th seal. But it is opposite to the 7 seals on chapter 8. Now, I would like to read tract number 15, page 10. It says, tract number 15, page 10. That the 7th seal contains chapters 8 to 22 is immediately seen by the fact that each chapter is connected with the conjunction end. In other words, the Revelation, save for the first 5 chapters, is but a reproduction of the things which were on record within the seals and which as a result of the breaking of the seals were pictorially displayed in John's side. So you see, brothers and sisters, I would like to illustrate that reading in this little diagram. The voice of inspiration is very plain, saying that the first 5 chapters, chapter 1, then chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, then chapter 6 from verse 1 to verse 17. It says there are 7 seals here. The 7 seals on chapter 6. 7 seals on chapter 6. But according to the voice of inspiration, brothers and sisters, chapter 8 up to chapter 22 is a reproduction of the 7 seals on chapter 6. Chapter 7 is sandwiched between 6 and 8. Therefore, the focal point of the subject, the 7 seals, being sealing period, is the 144,000 and the great multitude. Because that's what chapter 7, brothers and sisters, up to verse 17. There are only 2 main subjects on chapter 7. The 144,000 are the first fruits and the second fruits. So the word reproduction, all the 7 seals on chapter 6 is reproduced again on chapter 8. But it is in reverse order. Because the 7 seals on chapter 6 is in consecutive order. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7. But the seven seals, which is a reproduction, chapter 6, it is reverse order. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And since each seal, there must be respective trumpet, therefore let us distinctly separate the seven trumpets in its respective seal on chapter 6 and the seven trumpets in its respective seals on chapter 8. But still, it is in reverse order. 7 trumpets, 6 trumpet, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, then the first trumpet. But we are talking about the unfulfilled prophecy, the particular object in view. And that is what it means by the statement, I will show thee things which must be hereafter. Brothers and sisters, because God's word is very plain. To show God's people the things which will shortly come to pass. And the people mentioned there is the saints that will no longer to taste death, as we already proven it with absolute facts, brothers and sisters. Therefore, that statement in tract number 5, page 32, quoting Revelation 1, verse 1, and Revelation 4, verse 1, is pointing to the last generation of men, that God will reveal to them all the prophecies which were not yet fulfilled and to be fulfilled. And not only the things which were not yet fulfilled, which is to be fulfilled, but as well as to those prophecies which were already fulfilled. Now, let us now go back to our main subject, the fifth trumpet. Let's go back again to the reading in 12 symbolic code. Number 2 on page 4. Now we wish to ascertain what period we are living in. At the sounding of the sixth trumpet, the 4 angels are to be let loose, and they are then to kill a third part of men. And their army, moreover, is to number 200 million horsemen, that many horses. Since no such thing as this has ever happened, it therefore speaks for itself that the sixth trumpet is yet in the future. It has not yet commenced to sound. The sixth trumpet mentioned here, which is still in the future, is the sixth trumpet in the heavenly sanctuary, by which that trumpet will commence to sound until the proceedings of the sixth seal is finished, because the sixth seal precede the sixth trumpet. Whereas the proceedings that commence in October 22, 1844 is the first seal, not the sixth seal. Therefore, this statement in tract number 5 is the kindred events, not the particular object in view. Now, let us read tract number 5. And this is the very message that they thought that 12 symbolic code number 2, page 4 is contradicting tract number 5, page 78. Now, let us read tract number 5, page 78. The sixth trumpet. Revelation 9, verse 13 to 11, verse 14. Chapter 9, verse 13, or verses 13 and 14. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels, which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Now, let us read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. And it is a deep study, brethren, but there is a precious truth. It says, in coming from golden altar, the command, loose the 4 angels, shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. Otherwise, the voice would have come from the throne, the most holy place. For detailed treatment of the lifting of the veil, see tract number 3, the harvest. But as has been shown, we are still in the period of the fifth trumpet, a fact which evokes the question, how then could the sixth trumpet have sounded before the events of the fifth had expired? Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. To repeat again, let us distinctly separate the occurrence of the trumpets in the heavenly sanctuary and the occurrence of the trumpet on the earthly sanctuary. The particular object in view is in the heavenly sanctuary. And second, the particular object in view in the inter-subjects of the 7 trumpets and the 7 seals are the saints that will no longer to taste death. By which the promise says, it must be during the judgment for the living that the book of Revelation is to be more fully understood. To TG number 12, page 30. Now let us now focus our attention to the sixth trumpet. Then we will go back to the fifth trumpet. Now, in page 79, it says, it will be observed that though each of the trumpets begin at a definite time. So each trumpet begin at a definite time. Yet one overlaps the other. What overlaps? The events, not the time. Brothers and sisters, only the events that overlap each other. The same with the seven seals. The seven seals, there is a definite time of each seal, both earthly and heavenly, brothers and sisters, but the events overlap each other. The events of the first trumpet, although the period already ended, but the events still overlaps to the next period of the trumpet. Still continuing, for example, the flood. But actually, the main prophetic event in the first trumpet is universal flood. There is no more universal flood. Now, since we already established the absolute fact that each trumpet, there must be a definite time of beginning and ending, then we need to ascertain clearly the commencement of the fifth trumpet and the close of the fifth trumpet and the commencement of the sixth trumpet. Now, brothers and sisters, if we will be saying that the sounding of the sixth trumpet in 1833, prior to the time when the veil was lifted up in October 22, 1844, that is the particular object in view. The question now is, where is the groundwork? Because each trumpet, there must be groundwork. Secondly, how could it be that the sixth trumpet precede the sixth seal? Then it will be contradictory to the proper application of the prophecy. So the occurrence that takes place, the sounding of the sixth trumpet prior to 1844, and for sure, that is pointing to the first angel's message proclaimed by William Miller, perfectly typifying that before the Day of Atonement, there must be sounding of the trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets, as stated in Leviticus 23. Now let us read the Bible. Leviticus 23 and verse, I would like to read this statement. Verse 23 and 24. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the seventh month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation. And therefore, before the Day of Atonement, there are 10 days blowing of trumpets, which is exactly fits to the antitype that 10 years before Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, the message had been proclaimed by William Miller in 1833. Therefore, in this instance, 1 day is equivalent to 1 year. Numbers 14:34, Ezekiel 4 verse 6. But to repeat again, that is not the particular object in view. That is only the groundwork. Why? It's so because, first, I would like to read the statement in tract number 5, pages 79 and page 80. So let us read the statement. In the light of this fact, tract number 5, page 79 and page 80. In the light of this fact, we see that the time in which the two witnesses of Revelation 11 verse 3 were to prophesy 1,203 score days, clothed in sackcloth, must occur during the sounding of the sixth trumpet. And being in the future tense, the praise shall prophesy 1,203 score days. Revelation 11 verse 3 shows that at the time the trumpet began sounding, this period of 1,260 days was yet future. And that is the 1,260 days recorded in Revelation 11, I think verse 2 and verse 3. Now, I would like to make a simple illustration. For example, the groundwork, 1833. So this is the commencement. The sixth trumpet began sounding. And the voice of inspiration says that At the time when the sixth trumpet began sounding, that 1,260 days are still future. Now let us put here. This is the 1,260 days. We know that it is no longer prophetic. It is literal, 1,260 days or 3.5 years or 42 months. Commencement and close. So that 1,260 days are still future. And that is one of the subjects that had been privately interpreted by Florence Houghton, which causes embarrassment to all the Berean throughout the whole world. The 1,260 days. Now, I would like to read to you tract number 5 on page 111. This is a commentary of Revelation 11 verse 2, the 42 months mentioned here. It says, but the court is without the temple, in 110 in tract number 5. Revelation 11 verse 2. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Now let us read the commentary in 111 and 112. The 42 months, allowing 30 days to a month, and reckoning a day for a year, Ezekiel 4:6, represent the 1,260-year prophetic period, 538 AD to 1798 AD. The Shepherd's Rod, Volume 2, pages 142 and page 261. The Gentiles are mentioned are those who tread underfoot the holy city, the church, an act which calls our attention to the Master's prediction concerning the fate of the saints during this 42 months period. So it says, which calls our attention to the Master's prediction concerning the fate of the saints during this 42 months period. And it was quoted Luke 21 verse 24. And they, the church, shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away from the promised land, captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Luke 21 verse 24. The time that the Gentiles go out of Jerusalem and the Israelites go in. It is a deep subject, brethren, but I know that to those who are honest and sincere, hungering and thirsting for truth and righteousness, God will bestow unto us wisdom and understanding to understand this very important event, which is closely connected to our subject concerning the fifth trumpet, the sixth trumpet, and the seventh trumpet. But the 42 months is within the description of the sixth trumpet. And let us distinctly separate the sixth trumpet in the heavenly sanctuary and the sixth trumpet on the earthly sanctuary. Now let us focus first to Luke 21. I would like to read to you Bible commentary. Bible commentary here on 5 BC 1123. 5 BC 1123. It is concerning Luke 21, although the focus is only verse 20. Since to be repeated. After speaking of the end of the world, Jesus comes back to Jerusalem, the city then sitting in pride and arrogance, and saying, I sit a queen, and shall see no sorrow. As his prophetic eye rested upon Jerusalem, he sees that as she was given up to destruction, the world will be given up to its doom. The sins that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. Now let us view first the type, the historical event. The Spirit prophecy says that occurrence in Luke 21, verse 20 to verse 24, will be repeated again in the period of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner, more terrible. I remember the statement in the Great Controversy. I would like to read to you. On the Great Controversy, I think 613 or 614. It says here on the Great Controversy, page 614, the Great Controversy. It says, when he leaves the sanctuary, darkness covers the inhabitants of the earth. So when he leaves the sanctuary, darkness covers the inhabitants of the earth. But we need to study closely what apartment. Is it holy place or most holy place? Now, for example, I would like to read to you the old symbolic code. One symbolic code number 7, page 9. One symbolic code number 7, page 9. Christ's departure from the holy place. Let's read again. I would like to read in the upper portion. Some have an altogether too narrow view of the Godhead. They think that in order for Jesus to carry on the investigative judgment in the heavenly sanctuary, he must confine himself there every moment. That even in case of necessity, he cannot leave the place of the most holy apartment to do anything else until his mediatorial work is finished. Then it says, Christ's departure from the holy place. Remember, it is the holy place. One symbolic code number 7, page 9. Christ's departure from the holy place at the consummation of the investigative judgment. So let us distinctly separate the consummation of the investigative judgment in the holy place, because Jesus Christ will not depart from the holy place not until the entire proceedings in the holy place is consummated or it is finished. Christ's departure from the holy place at the consummation of the investigative judgment is to result in his visible second advent. Now the statement says, in the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, he departed from the holy place, not in the most holy place. Is to result in his visible second advent, whereas the event of Ezekiel 9 and Zechariah 2 verse 9 to 11 is an invisible coming. So Ezekiel 9 is invisible coming. Zechariah 2 verse 9 to 11 is invisible coming. And we will take that subject concerning the invisible coming of Jesus Christ. But let us focus first to our subjects, the sixth trumpet, and more particularly to the 42 months prophecy in Revelation 11 verse 2. By which the shepherd's rod says in tract number 5, 110, 111, that such 42 months point forward to Christ's prediction. What is the faith? What is the faith? Faith meaning F-A-T-E, meaning their future. What will happen to them, to the saints, during the 42 months period, according to that reading, brothers and sisters. And then in Bible commentary, 5 BC 11:2-3, it says that this predicted event, which is occurred in the past, in the destruction of Jerusalem, will be repeated again in the great and dreadful day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. But I would like to read, as I've said, the Great Controversy 614. When he leaves the sanctuary, darkness covers the inhabitants of the earth. In that fearful time, the righteous must live in the sight of a holy God without an intercessor. Concerning the 144,000 living saints, I think when we will be in the kingdom, in the preeminent kingdom, Mount Zion, it is no longer fearful time unto us because we are fully protected. The dragon cannot even war against us according to the shepherd's rod, because at that time they had been protected, guarded by Jesus Christ. Therefore, the dragon cannot war them personally. Can you project that statement? The devil or the dragon cannot war them personally, for they were already protected by Jesus Christ. They were already in the kingdom. I think tract number 15. Here in tract number 15. So, since you are fully protected, then it could no longer be a fearful time or a fearful hour, brothers and sisters, that period of time, being under the full protection of Jesus Christ. And that is the reason that it says that Satan cannot war them personally, or the dragon cannot make war with the saints at that time personally, because they were already protected by God. Tract number 15, page 88. The dragon cannot war with the woman, the church, that is made up of the first fruits, because at that time she is with the Lamb on Mount Zion, Revelation 14 verse 1, out of the dragon's reach. So that description in tract 15, page 88, when we are already in God's kingdom and immortality were granted to us, would you think that is still a fearful time? Ponder deeply, brethren. Let us be God's real people, logical thinker, not bait hunter. To TG 24:23. When he leaves the sanctuary, darkness covers the inhabitants of the earth. In that fearful time, the righteous must live in the sight of a holy God without an intercessor. Now let us apply to the holy place when Jesus Christ depart from the holy place. Brothers and sisters, when there will be no more intercessor in the holy place. And it says, the restraint which has been upon the wicked is removed, and Satan has entire control of the finally impenitent. God's long suffering has ended. The world has rejected His mercy, despised His love, and trampled upon His law. The wicked have passed the boundary of their provision. The Spirit of God persistently resisted, has been at last withdrawn. Unsheltered by divine grace, they have no protection from the wicked one. Satan will then plunge the inhabitants of the earth into one great final trouble. As the angels of God cease to hold in check the first winds of human passion, all the elements of strife will be let loose. The whole world will be involved in ruin, more terrible than that which came upon Jerusalem of old. The Great Controversy, page 640. Now let us view first the historical event. Exactly what Jesus Christ had been predicted, because it was in 66 AD. Brothers and sisters, now I would like to put here, Jesus predicted it in 31 AD, and that prediction of Jesus Christ was first fulfilled on October 16, 66 AD. At that time, the Jewish people were celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles. And we know that it is Sistius that surrounded the city. But Sistius withdrew with no apparent reason. But the attack was resumed by Titus on April 16, 70 AD. So exactly 42 months, exactly 1,260 days, when Jerusalem was surrounded by the Roman armies, and it was destroyed after the 42 months, after the 1,260 days. But it could not be the fulfillment of Revelation 11 verse 2, because Revelation 11 verse 2, according to the Shepherd's Rod, in tract number 5, page 79, that 1,260 days are still in the future at the time when the sixth trumpet began sounding. Now, it was fulfilled again during the Dark Ages, but it is 1,260 years, from 538 AD to 1798 AD. But still, it could not be the fulfillment of Revelation 11 verse 2. Why? Because Revelation 11 verse 2 is pointing to the time when, according to the voice of inspiration, when the temple or the cleansing in the heavenly sanctuary is finished. That is very plain. And Revelation 11 verse 2 is pointing to the great multitude which no man could number, given to the Gentiles. Or in other words, it was predicted beforehand that the message, the proclamation of the message to the great multitude will be 1,260 days. Would be 3.5 years. Would be 42 months. Now, I would like to quote first, brothers and sisters, that statement in 2 SR 155 or 154 and 155. It says, if Daniel means year by time and a half year by dividing of time in the 25th verse on the same chapter, then he must mean the same in the 12th verse. If the interpretation holds good in one verse, it must be in the other. Therefore, time would be 1 year, and a season a fourth part of a year, thus making a total of 1 year and 3 months. However, the period in the 25th verse has a prophetic term of 1,260 days, meaning years, but the time in which 12th verse cannot be prophetic, for then it would mean 450 literal years. Meaning, in the days of Beti-Hotep, brothers and sisters, very negative, that the year would still exist more than 450 years. How much more 1,260 years? That 1,260 days in Revelation 11 verse 2, never been fulfilled in the days of Bethel. Therefore, it could not be years. Otherwise, we'll be saying that there is another 1,260 years. That 1,260 years only happened once, according to 2SR. There is no more 1,260 years. Therefore, that must be 1,260 days, because it is only once, according to, it says, 2SR 142. The lesson teaches, 2SR 142, the lesson teaches that the Church of God fled into the wilderness only once in her entire history, and that was from 538 to 1798 AD. Only once. It will never happen again that there is another 1,260 years dark ages. No. And I think there is, we have that, I already give to you this 2TG, number 15, concerning the 42 months, right? And I would like to read the statement. 2TG 1510. So, let us read. It was taken in the card file, February 1953, BT Hotep. If you have that statement. It is possible that the 42 months of Revelation 11 verse 2, I think it is printed by Bayesian, this edition. It is possible that the 42 months of Revelation 11 verse 2 occupy an entirely different period of time than the 1,260 days mentioned in Revelation 13. For Jerusalem did not begin to be trodden underfoot in 538 AD, but was completely taken and destroyed in 70 AD. Or in other words, yes, there was a historical event, brothers and sisters, from 66 AD to 70 AD. That is exactly 42 months, exactly 1,260 days. But the result is that it was completely destroyed in 70 AD, according to the card file of B.T. Hotep, February 1953, by B.T. Hotep. Now let's read again the statement. It is possible that the 42 months of Revelation 11 verse 2 occupy an entirely different period of time than the 1,260 days mentioned in Revelation 13. For Jerusalem did not begin to be trodden underfoot in 538 AD, but was completely taken and destroyed in 70 AD. And of course, it points out to the sanctuary, brothers and sisters. It points out to the sanctuary in Jerusalem to be trodden underfoot. And historically, in 70 AD, it was completely destroyed, the temple in Jerusalem. And during the Dark Ages, there is no more sanctuary in Jerusalem. So I would like to read again the statement. The holy city is still underfoot and will be until the Gentiles drive out the Gentiles as predicted in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 21. So it is a deep subject because we need to connect Zechariah 1 verse 21. Not any part of the city will be underfoot after then, at which time the kingdom, the church purified, is set up there. The truth concerning the 42 months during which time the holy city is trodden underfoot by the Gentiles is therefore not completely revealed and had better be left alone until God makes it known. So this is one of the subject, brothers and sisters, that it was not completely revealed. And it says that it would be better that it should be left alone. But what the Bidian did, Mrs. Florence Hotep began to interpret this very important prophecy, and the result was embarrassment to all the Bidian, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read to you in 11 symbolic code, number 8, page 3. And it's entitled Judah and the People of God. And concerning Judah, that is connected to the prediction of the World War II. I would like to read first, timely greetings. 1TG, I think if you have time, you can read this entire booklet, 1TG number 15. And it is entitled The Jews and the Christians' Faith in the Prophets. And the prominent one mentioned is Hosea chapter 1 verse 11 and Hosea chapter 3 verse 5, then Joel 3 verse 1 and 2. And then Amos chapter 9 verse 9 to 15. I'm reading 1TG 15:12. and 15:13. And on page 14, it is Obadiah chapter 1, verse 15 to 18. So I would like to read this portion in 1TG 15, page 14. It says, "In harmony with all the prophets before him, and in perfect clarity, Obadiah too relates that in the day the Lord destroys the heathen, in the day of harvest or judgment, otherwise called the cleansing of the sanctuary, and the purification of the church, and also the great and dreadful day of the Lord." Brethren, the cleansing of the sanctuary is pointing to the last and the final day of atonement. We explained it several times, March 27, 2021, because in Bible calendar that was October 10, 2022. I would like to read again the statement here in 1TG number 15, page 14. That the cleansing of the sanctuary, Daniel 8:14, that is the judgment for the living. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that concerning Daniel 8, verse 14, tract number 3, page 53. Let us read again the statement given by the shepherd's rod, saying, "This startling revelation shows conclusively that the cleansing, according to Daniel 8, verse 14, is first of the sanctuary in heaven." Concerning the cleansing, according to Daniel 8:14, it says, first it is in the sanctuary in heaven, and second of the sanctuary on earth. First in heaven, and there's no other cleansing that is blotting out of names. That's what it means by the word cleansing. According to 1TG number 11, it says here on page 10, the cleansing of the sanctuary, the purification of it by blotting out from the books the names. 1TG 11:10. What is the cleansing of the sanctuary? The purification of the church, blotting out of names. But we already read 1TG 45:12 that Daniel 8:14, that is pointing to the judgment for the living. 1TG 45:12. We are to study the 66th chapter of Isaiah. In this chapter, the Lord speaks to two groups of servants. The servants up to the cleansing of the sanctuary, Daniel 8:14, up to the judgment of the living, the purification of the church. Daniel 8:14 is cleansing of the sanctuary, the purification of the church, which is blotting out of names, because that is the only thing that is called purification, when it is the wicked that had been taken out from among the righteous. Tract number 1, page 25, it says, "In this scripture too is seen the purification of the church, for the bad ones are taken away from the good, and not the good from among the bad." Therefore, if it is the good that had been taken out from among the bad, no, it is not called purification of the church. Only that proceedings when it is the names of the wicked had been taken out from among the righteous. And it points out to the last day of atonement, the blotting out of names under the congregation among the living. And it is called by the shepherd's rod the day of reckoning. In tract number 3, right, page 8. So there must come a day of reckoning, a day when the names of those who are found unworthy of eternal life will be blotted out of the Lamb's book of life, a proceeding for which the only correct term can be investigative judgment. That is the only correct term, the day of reckoning. In other words, immediately after that blotting out of names, March 27, 2021, Jesus Christ will visit the earth, and there will be a great change, because it is the branch, Jesus Christ, whose name is the branch, brothers and sisters, that will cause such great change. Now, I would like to read 1TG 15:14. Let us continue. "Also the great and dreadful day of the Lord, there shall be deliverance upon Mount Zion, and the house of Jacob shall possess the wealth of the heathen." Do you believe in the testimony of Jesus through his prophets? If not, then how can you say that you speak according to the law and to the testimony? Isaiah 8 verse 20. Ever remember that the law and the testimony always go hand in hand. Then it says, the prophet Jonah is next in line, but we shall consider his prophecies inscribed in plural form. So the 4 chapters of the book of the book of Jonah rather, the 4 chapters of the book of Jonah, no, it is not just a mere history, but there are prophecies. And for sure, the prophecies recorded in the book of Jonah must be typological prophecies. How many is it? 4 chapters, the book of Jonah. Let us look at, brothers and sisters. Yes, there are 4 chapters in the book of Jonah. And to repeat again, these 4 chapters of all Seventh-day Adventist Church, what they knew is only history, brothers and sisters. They have no knowledge concerning the prophecies of the book of Jonah. But according to 1 TG number 15, page 14, we shall consider the prophecies of Jonah when we come to the prophet Nahum. Or in other words, the prophecies of Jonah can only be understood when the prophecies of Nahum will be in fulfillment. Now, I would like to read 1 TG 24. 1 TG number 24, pages 18 and page 19. 1 TG 24, pages 18 and page 19. What is the overall purpose of Nahum's prophecy? So what is the particular object in view? The principal purpose of the entire book of the prophecy recorded in the book of Nahum. Then it says, it is to enlighten God's people of the signs of the times. Now, I would like to read again the statement in 1 TG. 51, page 5. If the church is not commensurably growing and expanding, then how can she be a living church? And how can she keep up with the signs of the times and with the progress in the sanctuary above? Signs of the times. What is the signs of the times? Is it the thing that had been seen by our finite observation? Why is it to the shepherds that connect the occurrence in the heavenly sanctuary with the progress in the sanctuary above? Ponder deeply, brethren. In Testimonies for the Church, volume 6, this 4 prophecy says, let's read, 404, in volume 6, brethren, to whom the truths of God's word had been opened, what part will you act in the closing scenes of this world history? And what do you understand now? Would you think we are not now in that predicted event that the world history is about to close? Are you awake to these solemn realities? Do you realize the grand work of preparation that is going on in heaven and on earth? So the very first mention is heaven first before earth. The grand work of preparation that is going on in heaven and on earth. And according to the great controversy, it says, the work of preparation is an individual work. And then it says, for we are not saved in groups. The great controversy, 490, and it is emphasizing to the blotting out of names. It says, while the high priest was making the atonement for Israel, all were required to afflict their souls by repentance of sin and humiliation before the Lord, lest they be cut off from among the people. In like manner, all who would have their names retained in the book of life should now, in the few remaining days of their probation, yes, how many days from now? To March 27, 2021. In the few remaining days of their probation, afflict their souls before God by sorrow for sin and through repentance. There must be deep, faithful searching of heart. The light, frivolous spirit indulged by so many professed Christians must be put away. There is earnest warfare before all who would subdue the evil tendencies that strive for the mastery. The work of preparation is an individual work. We are not saved in groups. The Great Controversy, page 490. Now, I would like to read again 1 TG 24, page 18 and 19. What is the overall purpose of Nahum's prophecy?
It is to enlighten God's people of the signs of the times. So it is to enlighten God's people of the signs of the times, to make them aware that the great and dreadful day of the Lord is at hand, that the purification of the church, the judgment in the house of God, 1 Peter 4:17, is soon to take place, that the wicked shall not much longer be in their midst, that the redemption of the righteous is at hand, that they must not fail to perform their God-given duties. Indeed, Nahum's prophecy clearly identifies God's people of today under the Assyrian yoke and points to their liberation. 1 TG number 24, page 18 and page 19. Why is it that I read the book of Nahum concerning this passage? Although it will be discussed in detail in the subject when World War II will be resumed. I read this statement. It's so because the book of Jonah must be considered when we come to the book of Nahum. According to 1 TG number 15, page 14, saying, the prophet Jonah is next in line, but we shall consider his prophecies when we come to the prophet Nahum. In other words, the prophecies concerning Jonah and the people of God must be considered, will find its fulfillment at the time when the book of Nahum is in fulfillment. Now, I would like to read again 11 Symbolic Code, number 8, page 3. Jonah and the people of God. It says, the question has frequently come to Mount Carmel since the subject of the 42 months was explained in the Symbolic Code, asking why the code has never said when the 42 months started and when the great earthquake of Revelation 11 is to take place. What is the great earthquake in Revelation 11? What verse? Now let us read tract number 5. Tract number 5 on page 112. It says, verse 13. Revelation 11, verse 13. What is Revelation 11, verse 13? That is still under the description of the sixth trumpet. So let's read. It says, and the same hour was there a great earthquake. So this is the great earthquake in the book of Revelation, chapter 11. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were uprighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. Now let us read 2 TG. 2 TG number 15. In page 3 it says, that which is to be during the sixth trumpet, while provision still lasts, or while provisionary time still lingers. But I would like to read page 12 on 1 TG number 15. Page 12. It says, a 10th part of the city must represent the Lord's part, the tithe, so to speak. The earthquake therefore represents a shaking in the church of God. The remnant who give glory to God can only be the faithful who survive the shaking. Thus is the church purified. This earthquake then is symbolical of the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 and coincides with Isaiah 66, verse 16. Thus the shaking and the slaughter pointing to the same event. So that is the important question. Although we will continue that subject on the next episode. But in that reading, in 2 TG 15:12, there are two things mentioned there. The shaking or the great earthquake in Revelation 11:13 represents the shaking. The great earthquake in Revelation 11:13 represents the slaughter. The question is that, does the shaking and the slaughter pointing to the same event? So let us focus first to the shaking. The quotation in, I would like to go to tract number 3, page 86. Tract number 3, page 86. The 40 days in Acts chapter 1, verse 3 and 9, from the resurrection to the ascension, are consequently typical of the period from 1844 to the fulfillment of the marking and slaying as recorded in Ezekiel chapter 9 and Revelation 7 verse 3 to 8, Revelation 14 verse 1 to 5 respectively, and in Testimonies to Ministers page 445, Testimonies for the Church volume 3 page 266, also early writings page 270 and page 273. What is the subject recorded in early writings 270 and 272? In 270 it says, I asked the meaning of the shaking I had seen, and was shown that it would be caused by the straight testimony called forth by the counsel of the true witness to the Laodiceans. This will have its effect upon the heart of the receiver and will lead him to exalt the standard and pour forth the straight truth. Some will not bear this straight testimony. They will rise up against it, and this is what will cause a shaking among God's people. Early Writings, page 270. So the quotation given in tract number 3, page 86, which is revealed by 40 typical days, first pointing to the shaking. Early Writings, page 270. Will you please quote that statement in the Old Symbolic Code? Says, the shaking will continue. I think there's a statement saying that such shaking will continue until the 144,000 will be completely sealed. Old Symbolic Code. One Symbolic Code number 17, page 3. One Symbolic Code number 17, page 3. Indeed, this glorious message is caused a shaking among God's people. Early Writings, page 270. So that is the one we read. And do not forget that Early Writings, page 270, is quoted in tract number 3, page 86, which is a part of that mystical number 40. Now it says here, indeed this glorious message is causing a shaking among God's people. Early Writings, page 270. And though many will arise against it, the honest in heart will receive it and cause them to exalt the standard in their own lives and lift it up for others to behold. Hence the shaking will go on until the closing work for the church, the sealing of the 144,000, is finished, when angels' hands shall remove all things that offend, leaving God's church pure and spotless. We find that many in our ranks long for the experience which all who are left in the land will have. So the shaking will be during the closing work for the church, the sealing time of the 144,000, and this shaking will continue until the sealing of the 144,000 living saints is finished. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to go back again to early writings. Early Writings, page 271, because the quotation in tract number 3, page 86 is Early Writings 270, 271, 272, and 273. In 271 it says, I heard those clothed with the armor speak forth the truth with great power. It had effect. Many had been bound, some wives by their husbands, and some children by their parents. The honest who had been prevented from hearing the truth, now eagerly laid hold upon it. All fear of their relatives was gone, and the truth alone was exalted to them. They had been hungering and thirsting for truth. It was dearer and more precious than life. I asked what had made this great change. An angel answered, it is the latter rain, the refreshing from the presence of the Lord, the loud cry of the third angel's message. And that great change is mentioned in tract number 5. Let's read tract number 5 on page 58. Tract number 5, page 58. The last 3 of the 7 trumpets being wood trumpets, unlike the first 4, some great change obviously is to take place between the first 4 and the last 3. Tract number 5, page 58. There are 2 great changes. The great change in the groundwork, the great change in the particular object and view. What is the great change? Great change on the groundwork. It is pointing to the first advent of Jesus Christ at His crucifixion. And that great change is that vengeance differed to grace. But how about in the particular object and view? Since we have the groundwork. And also the statement in 1 TG, number 8, and please prepare the Advent Review, that bold letter. It says here, page 24, in tract number 8. Who is to bring this revival and reformation? Who? Who is to bring this revival and reformation? This great change. What is the great change? The predicted revival and reformation. And who is to bring this revival and reformation, this great change? The branch. And according to Isaiah 11, verse 1 to 5, the branch is the Lord, the Son of David. Or in other words, it is Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ will visit the earth, and hoping that we will place ourselves on the right side. Because according to tract number 1, it says on page 24, quoting volume 5, page 690, it says, these solemn words, tract number 1, page 24, may it lay well to heart, and may none let the enemy beguile them with good words and fair speeches on this life and death matter. Fix in your mind, fix it in your mind, the fact that Christ rising up from his mediatorial work cannot be after probation has closed. For note carefully, he is to rise up during the unfolding of truth. That is, during the unfolding of the present truth under the seventh seal. Then it says, let it take heed that he fall not to criticize the message or the messengers, but rather that he sigh and cry as the Lord bids, for all the abominations that be done in the midst, the church, lest he be found on the wrong side, reigns with the evildoers, and thus doomed to fall under the angels' slaughter weapons. Tract number 1, page 24. Now, I would like to go back again to 11 symbolic code number 8, page 3, and we'll continue the subject in our next episode. The question has frequently came to Mount Carmel since the subject of the 42 months was explained in the symbolic code, asking why the code has never said when the 42 months started and when the great earthquake of Revelation 11 is to take place. So all the Midian, more particularly in the days of Hotep, they have no knowledge when the 42 months will start and finish, and when the great earthquake, which is divided into 2 phases, the shaking and the slaughtering, it was not revealed to them when it will take place. And because of such eagerness to know, without inspiration, it caused the Bejan to a great embarrassment in 1959, engaging in private interpretation. And it says here, it is true that just as the stork in the heaven knoweth her appointed times, and the turtle and the crane and the swallow observe the time of their coming, Jeremiah 8:7, God has mercifully made available to his people the knowledge of the judgment of the Lord for this age, if they are willing to know it, He has not, however, seen fit at this time to make known the day and hour. He has told his people enough that they certainly need not be caught unawares as one being surprised by an expected thief. You see, brothers and sisters, it is revealed, or all the necessary information already recorded in the Shepherd's Rod publications, but the prophet himself says, no, it is not yet the appointed time in the days of Hotep. But when the time will come, for sure, it will be completely revealed. And we are now in that period of time by which those prophecies is exactly and completely revealed, graciously, mercifully placed in our hands. Such information to be spread, to be proclaimed to all the saints who wish to be among that 144,000 that will no longer to taste death. We will continue this subject, brethren. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. We love you, hoping to see you in God's kingdom. Thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.